Hey, good evening. So now we are proceeding into our course. Earlier this afternoon, I sent you in Google Classroom your first reading. It's called The Power of Academic Conversations by Professor Sheila Gibson from Holy Names University. So you may want to have that handy with you as I proceed with this lecture and introducing that reading. So there's a Power Academic Conversations, which is a speech that she gave to a graduating class many years ago at her university. And also the assignment, the first writing assignment you have is also attached to that. So please have that handy as I introduce that reading. So as we proceed into college classes, the question is often asked, what is the essence of college education? And it becomes really interesting since you're taking your first college classes. A lot of people think about that. Well, what is the purpose of college education? What is the essence of college education? Obviously, we always think that, hey, yeah, it's always we're studying books, we're taking tests, we're writing essays, we're completing math homework, we're doing things towards our major individually. Yes, and that's very important. Yes, the individual achievement is very important in college. But Dr. Gibson argues that, hey, college has the importance, essence of college is actually other things, such as academic conversation. And she goes about trying to prove that in her graduation speech. So a little bit of background. Holy Names University, if you remember when I introduced myself, that's where I got my master's degree in English. And it is a private Roman Catholic university very close to you. It's actually about halfway up the Oakland Hills. If you take the 35th Avenue exit in Oakland and you take a left turn, you go up 35th Avenue about halfway towards Mountain Boulevard, you should see Holy Names University. It's actually a private Roman Catholic university. It turns out a lot of athletes, doctors, nurses, people who are really interested in furthering their education and helping the world. When I went to that university, I really wasn't Catholic. So again, I'm not going to preach to you. So I did have apprehensions because it is a Roman Catholic university. So I did have apprehensions going there. But when I went there, it was really great. It was really a private education. Really, the teachers, the professors really cared. The nuns there who were professors really cared about the students. So I really had a great experience there. And I urge you to sort of check out that university too as you choose colleges. But anyway, Professor Gibson is a longtime teacher at that university, a professor of philosophy. And she was chosen to speak at the graduation ceremony of 2004, back in 2004. Professor Gibson was thinking, hey, if I give a graduation speech, maybe it would, I really want to make it exciting because I know the previous graduation speeches I went to, and I'm thinking if I'm in the shoes of parents and family, you really don't want to hear people give long speeches under hot sun and really bore you to death. So she vowed to say, hey, if I gave a graduation speech, I would just keep it very short. So she was telling the students at this graduation ceremony what she would do. So this is basically a transcript of her graduation ceremony speech that she actually gave in 2004 at the undergraduate hooting ceremony. So take a look at the speech. And what happened is that she basically says, hey, if I was to give a speech, I would just walk up there and just give a quote from Plato, who wrote a letter to a friend. In these conversations, sometime a spark is kindled, which henceforth nourishes itself. In these conversations, sometime a spark is kindled, which henceforth nourishes itself. It's a very profound quote, but very general. And then she said she would just sit down. But what do you think would happen at that speech? You have parents, families, friends. Are they really going to be happy to hear a professor just give that little quote and sit down? Oh, of course not. They're going to be confused. People will interpret that speech in different ways. So Gibson talks about that. So that's like the context of her graduation ceremony speech. But then she says, hey, she thinks that if you really analyze that quote by Plato, that quote really gets into the essence of college educations about conversations, academic conversations. So then she proceeds to basically analyze every important word in that quote. In these conversation, sometime, so conversation, sometime, a spark is another important word, the third most important word, kindled, which henceforth nourishes itself. So you have some key words there in her quote, in the Plato's quote, which she basically analyzes. So she goes about that. and kind of discusses how the words may not seem that important, but they really are if you look at it in the context of academic conversations in college. So she argues that point. So basically, read her analysis with an open, critical mind. You may agree totally with her, you may not agree, or you may agree partly, but just read it with an open mind. It's just a way for her to engage the audience and basically reflect on her college education. She also later brings up a couple important concepts too about in her speech. If you get towards the second page, she talked about academic freedom and helping others, service to the worldwide community as part of a college education. Let's take a look at a term that she brings up, academic freedom. And also she brings up too the allegory of the cave, the Plato's allegory of the cave that I want to talk about too. So let's talk about academic freedom. She talks about academic freedom in college education, which is very important. Academic freedom is basically the right of any student or professor to basically pursue a course of study or learn without undue interference. Do other countries, does everyone in the world have this right to in education, the freedom to actually pursue their preferred method of study or their preferred field of study without any undue interference from anyone? Think about that. Do we have that right? Do we have that freedom? Do others in the world have that freedom? Well, what do you think about that? Also, your teachers. What do you think about academic freedom? Does your professor or your teacher have the right to give their opinion, or should they stay neutral? What do you think? So should a teacher, a lot of students would say, hey, a teacher should basically be neutral, right? They should just be neutral since they're a teacher, right? They're supposed to moderate the discussion in the classroom and students can give all their opinions. Well, that's not really right. In a way, a teacher can give their opinions. So they can basically criticize the government. They can criticize President Trump. They can do anything they want. Because a teacher has their right to express their opinion. But should a teacher squelch or basically cut down the opinion of a student they disagree with? What do you think? Did you ever get put down by a teacher? Do you have freedom at Fremont High to give your views without a professor or a teacher cutting you down or basically trying to shut you down? What do you think? So basically, as you go through the homework, maybe share that with me. Do you have the freedom? Do you feel that teachers give you freedom to talk, or do they try to rush you or try to cut you off when they actually ask you about issues? But I think a teacher should basically, even if they disagree with you, they should say, "Hey, I may not quite agree, but let's discuss it. What other other students think about this?" What do people think? Like the teacher, even though they disagree, they should be just clear that, hey, let's keep on discussing this. Maybe you as a student may be able to change my mind about being about the issue, right? So teachers should, even though they disagree, basically try to get other opinions and basically listen to the student and say, hey, what do you think, right? Maybe think about, critically reflect on what the student has to say. So that's very important. And the thing about Allegory of the Cave, she brings up Plato's Allegory of the Cave. Do you know what the Allegory of the Cave means? That's very important. That's very important allegory that she talks about. Allegory is basically a story where the characters kind of represent things of humanity, like I actually may represent greed or evil, or this person may represent morality. So it's basically a story where the characters and events represent are symbolic of something human, like human qualities, right? Or basically general human qualities, like this person represents hate, this person represents greed. So Allegory of the Cave in Plato is basically, I want you to imagine this scene. Imagine a very dark cave. Long time ago, imagine a very dark cave where there lived a bunch of prisoners who grew up in this cave. They were born in this cave and they grew up in this cave. So they're a bunch of prisoners. They're sitting in the cave. They're shackled and chained together. All they know is just that they're born in the cave and they are growing up in the cave. There are also guards in the cave who are behind the prisoners guarding them. You know, the guards have also spent most of their lives in the cave. In the cave is dark. It's illuminated by there's a fire. There's actually a fireplace where when it's lit, the cave actually becomes bright. But since there are no mirrors in this time, all you see is basically when the prisoners are facing the cave wall, all they see is basically shadows, right? Basically shadows. They don't see people.